Hello, Houston, coming up this hour, we'll speak with State Senator Carol Alvarado, who will discuss her attempt to filibuster the new recently passed Texas congressional maps. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm guest host Doug Miller. 20 years after Hurricane Katrina, we'll also talk with former Houston Mayor Bill White, who led the city's massive response to an unprecedented humanitarian crisis.
And I'm guest host Chau Nguyen, plus Dr. Faviola Cantu, the Chief Academic Officer for Aldine ISD, will join us to tell us all about the district's recent successes.
And we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts, questions, and concerns? Give us a call or text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man who was wrongfully deported to El Salvador and later returned to the United States, has been taken into immigration custody. Now he's being processed for deportation to Uganda. NPR's Sergio Martinez Beltran reports.
Today's development was expected. That's because last week, the U.S. government served Abrego Garcia with a notification requiring him to report to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement offices in Baltimore for a mandatory check-in. This came after he was released from federal custody in Tennessee pending a trial on separate criminal charges. The government also notified him then he was likely to be deported to Uganda. Abrego Garcia has already filed a lawsuit challenging his new detention and the efforts to deport him without due process. That could delay his deportation and put his fate again in the hands of a federal judge. Sergio Martinez Beltran, NPR News.
President Trump wants to do away with a cashless bail for people arrested in Washington, D.C. He signed an executive order today against the practice, which he described as a pass for violent criminals in the district.
They kill people and they get out. Cashless bail. They thought it was discriminatory to make people put up money because they just killed 3 people lying on a street. Any street all over the country, cashless bail. We're ending it, but we're starting by ending it in D.C., and that we have the right to do through federalization.
Supporters of the policy view it as a measure against financial-based discrimination. President Trump is also ordering the prosecution of anyone who engages in flag burning. Medics and reporters say Israeli attacks on a hospital complex in Gaza have left at least 21 people dead. Those killed include several Palestinian journalists working for international news organizations. NPR's Abida Solomon has details.
An Israeli strike appears to have hit a live position for Reuters broadcast at a main hospital before the military struck the medical complex a second time, striking a stairwell where more journalists and rescue workers had gathered. Media outlets, including Reuters, confirmed their journalists were killed in Israel's attack on the Nasser medical complex in southern Gaza. The 4 journalists killed were identified as Reuters cameraman Hossam Al-Masri, Al Jazeera cameraman Mohammed Salama, freelance journalist Mariam Abuldakka, a mother who freelanced with the AP and others, and journalist Moaz Abu Taha, a Reuters photographer, is among several wounded. Palestinians count more than 240 journalists killed in Gaza in Israeli attacks in the war. Abida Solomon, NPR News, Dubai.
At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 222 points, or nearly 0.5%. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. A week from today, on September 1st, hundreds of new Texas laws go into effect, all passed by the Texas legislature earlier this year. That includes Senate Bill 922, a measure that aims to help patients better understand the results of sensitive medical tests. KERA's Andy Lusk has more.
The new law delays the release of certain medical test results for up to 3 days, giving doctors a chance to better explain things to patients. Previously, potentially life-changing results, think cancer and genetic diseases, were released electronically to Texas patients as soon as possible. According to the Texas Medical Association, this meant patients received confusing information without immediate guidance. Dallas oncologist David Gerber said the old system sometimes left patients alone with big news, like seeing results on their phones during weddings or right before job interviews. Gerber said supporters of the change don't want to withhold information, just deliver it in the best way possible. I'm Andy Lusk in Dallas.
A leak in the supply line of propellant to SpaceX's Starship rocket caused the mission from South Texas to be scrubbed late last night. The rocket was on the launch pad ready for takeoff when the issue was found and the mission was halted. Eric Berger is senior space editor with Ars Technica and spoke with Houston Matters this morning.
These kinds of scrubs are not welcome, but fairly routine in big launches like this. And actually, SpaceX has had a pretty good record with the Starship rocket. As large and as novel as it is, they've gotten off on schedule most of the time. So I would expect them to have addressed this problem pretty quickly.
The 400-foot rocket is being developed for a crew to travel to Mars one day. SpaceX could try for another launch later tonight. Homes and businesses in the A-Leaf area have running water again after a stint without it over the weekend. KHOU reports that water service was disrupted for about 24 hours. Officials blame the water leak on the hot conditions during the summer and aging infrastructure. Houston Public Works restored service on Sunday afternoon. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Well, almost.
Almost.
Yeah, Frank Billingsley. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hello, Houston. I'm with Doug Miller and Chau Nguyen, a former KHOU
colleagues.
How about this? Yeah, it's old home, the TV old home week here, isn't
it's
it?
Like Channel 11 bookends for me, right? Both of you. It's an honor to be with you guys. Thank you for being here today.
It's a great pleasure to be with you too, Frank.
It's really fun.
Now, okay, did you get caught in that traffic this morning at the University of Houston campus? Does every student come back to school on the same day at the same hour, or what?
It was a snail's pace just getting here.
It was awful.
And
don't go to school, kids. Just stay at home.
Well, at least they want to get there on time.
I guess so.
And I got to tell you, Frank, since I went to the University of Houston, it's my alma mater here, and I passed by my old dorm. Well, since they built the train line through there, and I had a hard time just getting around campus. What building is that? Wait a minute. Hold on. Where's Agnes Arnold? I'm turning. No, go this way, that way. It was. I felt old.
Well, I guess we'll survive. There's going to be a couple of weeks of traffic like that, from what I understand. So
just have to leave a little bit early.
I know, but I've got you for the week to start, so I'm glad of that. And also, former Mayor Bill White is in the house. He's going to talk about Katrina. This is the anniversary of Katrina. Rodney Ellis is going to be here to talk about Harvey, Hurricane Harvey. So I'm kind of excited from a personal standpoint on these weather issues we're going to discuss. Also, Carol Alvarado is going to be with us to talk about what's going on in the Texas legislature. Yeah. So, Chau, take it away.
Well, we talk about old colleagues, but, Mayor Bill White was a colleague, and so it's like a reunion of sorts for all of us. Yeah, we were talking about a lot of things this morning, but of course we're still talking about redistricting hours after the Texas Senate approved a new congressional map early Saturday morning that more heavily favors Republicans. Legislation Governor Greg Abbott plans to swiftly sign into law. A lawsuit against the governor was filed alleging that the redrawn districts are racially discriminatory. Now, this 67-page complaint against Abbott and Secretary of State Jane Nelson supplements legal action filed by LULAC back in 2021, challenging the state's original maps and argues that redrawing maps mid-decade is unconstitutional. Now, the National Redistricting Foundation, which brought LULAC's initial lawsuit, is also directing this new case. Does this lawsuit have any merit? We want to hear from you, the viewers, at 713-440-8870. Now, joining us is Senator Carol Alvarado. She is a Democrat from Houston. To discuss, Senator Alvarado, you tried to filibuster this vote?
Yeah, she's going to be joining us momentarily, as a matter of fact. I guess you're up to speed on all this redistricting. It's kind of frightening.
It really is, and it feels very tit for tat to me. Is that?
Well,
is
on
that...
a national scale, for sure.
Yeah.
Texas does it. California
Right.
doing it. Maybe Illinois comes into the fray. Florida back into the fray. So you get a Republican, I get a Democrat. You get a Republican, I get a Democrat. What's your take, Doug?
You know, I covered the last, actually, when Tom DeLay tried to do the same thing. It succeeded in redistricting.
And got sued.
He did, and but it worked. It worked, and as soon as I heard about this redistricting effort, I thought, well, it's going to happen. And much of what's going on with this, what we've seen since then, is pretty much theater. The outcome is predetermined. We knew that redistricting would pass. We know that Governor Abbott will sign the legislation, and Democrats were pretty much powerless to do anything about it.
Well, they're going to try everything they can. I mean, they walked out for 2 weeks, so that was at least they made noise about it on a national scale. Because if they hadn't, if they had just said, well, it's all predetermined, it's going to happen, then the nation may have said, oh, well, Texas is doing Texas, right?
Right.
But it was pretty much brought to the forefront on all of this. So
Yeah, I think America's paying attention. I think Texans are paying attention right now.
A lot of people are paying attention. And it's going to be interesting. They're probably also going to pay attention to this lawsuit to see how that pans out. Now, we were talking to Jelena Jones just last Friday. Her take is that the redistricting lines may have been drawn using AI. What do you think about that?
That wouldn't surprise me at all. Old friend of mine, Richard Murray, Dr. Richard Murray from the retired at the University of Houston.
Yeah.
He is he thinks it was built with AI. He looked at it and he thought it was very, very clever. Those were the words he used to describe it. It was very precisely drawn, which is why gerrymandering today is very different from gerrymandering 50 years ago. It is so precise now that they can hone it down to one side of the street. The voters are more likely to vote Republican. On the other side of the street, they're more likely to vote Democrat, as opposed to saying, yeah, you know, Representative Jones, I think I got a lot more supporters in that district, blah, blah, blah. I think that's my area. Now it is so highly refined.
Well, it's data driven, so you aggregate the data and you can look at the demographics in such a manner that you really can draw the lines and say this is going to go red and this is going to go blue.
Well, Houston Press had an article just written today suggesting that it could backfire on Republicans because even though you do think that this side's going to be red and this side's going to be blue, by the time you get to 2026, people may have changed their mind. People may have moved. It might have brought out more Democrats than you expected, and you never really know.
And more specifically, I think what I'm going to be looking for is what might happen on the border, because so many of those areas surprised people when they flipped for Trump. So many Hispanic voters flipping for Trump. Well, now I've been reading some polling and some journalism on the fact that many Hispanics who voted for Trump are now very disillusioned. So when they carve out these districts, they have to carve in. You're cutting you're cutting a pie up, and you could easily create some Democratic leaning districts if you're not careful, because there's only so many Republicans, so many Democrats spread around.
Right, and these voters, like you said, Doug, can flip and can change their minds in the light of what we've seen in the presidential election. Midterms is coming up. They don't like what they see about immigration. They don't like what they're seeing on the news.
Well,
it's risky.
Of course, Senator Carol Alvarado has called in now. She's a Democrat, as most of you know, from the Houston area. Carol Alvarado, welcome, first of all, to Hello Houston. It's nice to see you again.
Hello there. How are y'all?
We're good. I have Doug Miller with me and Chau Nguyen with me from formerly of Channel 11. Yeah.
Good to hear from you, Senator.
All my friends.
All your friends.
It's like
Listen,
a reunion.
I understand that
I could use some friends. I could use some friends today.
I understand you tried to filibuster the vote on the redistricting and pretty much got kiboshed. What happened?
Well, I think they fabricated an excuse to shut it down. There was an email that my campaign team had sent out like early in the day. And just, how you do, hey, I'm going to go do this, just make this speech or do whatever, tip in, support me, blah, blah, blah. There's no rule against law. But, Senator Perry one of my colleagues said that he was offended by it. So that's why they shut it down. And I asked, well, if I'm the issue, there are other members ready to filibuster, and they shut that down. And I asked if I could speak, just have some remarks, rebut, defend myself, and that was shut down. I was told I was recognized, so that's how it ended.
So this was the procedural move. In essence, were they saying you were trying to raise funds during a session, and I believe that's against the rules? Am I reading that correctly?
Well, there are no rules on fundraising during a special session. There's no rule or law that would prohibit somebody sending out an email hours and hours before. I mean, this email was out, probably 1 o'clock in the afternoon or so, and I was going to start filibustering, I guess, about 11:30. And I kind of knew something was up when they decided to take a 3-hour dinner break at 11:30 at night.
Yeah, that's a late dinner.
Well, if I
understand, and a long one.
Yeah.
If I understood you correctly, basically someone said they were offended by your filibustering, and that shut it down.
They were offended by an email that they saw.
Oh, the email saying you were going to filibuster. Okay. Well, all right. So, I mean, what now? Are there any? The LULAC suit came out today, so that's going to challenge this. And Doug was just talking about all the Latino votes down at the Valley going red. There may be some disgruntlement. There could be some surprises with what happens next. Don't you think?
I agree. There's so many things that the Trump administration has passed, so many bad policies that by the time November rolls around, early voting starts, I think people will start to be impacted by cuts that were made, whether it's health care or it's the tariffs, or people upset about the deportation tactics, or upset about this mid-decade redistricting when people realize what district they're in and who their member of Congress potentially could be. I think people will rise up and vote probably different than they did the last time if they voted for Trump. I mean, look at what they did with Congressional District 29, completely dismantled. So now I'm in CD9, which is paired with Liberty County. The East End.
Senator, we do have a call for you from Jacob. He's in Montrose. Okay. He has a question for Senator Alvarado. Jacob, you're on the line.
Okay, Senator Alvarado, what about Brandon Kane? He's the state senator, and he's going to run for the U.S. rep.
You're talking about Briscoe Kane, right?
Right. Briscoe Kane is a Republican out of the Baytown area, East Harris County, and so he would be a candidate. I see that the lady that ran for county judge, I think she's also running for that district as well. Alexandra DeMora, I believe her name is.
Yeah. We're going to have Briscoe on the show tomorrow. As a matter of fact.
Okay.
So he'll be on the program tomorrow. So the curious thing is Briscoe Kane, one of the more conservative members of the legislative delegation, is we're talking. He could end up being your representative in Congress. What do you think about that?
Well, not happy with it. Nothing against him personally, but I don't think that he supports a lot of the issues that my community in the East End supports.
So
we were very much against vouchers, and he was for vouchers.
Right.
So, I mean, let's just start right there.
Senator Alvarado, do you think we were discussing, Chau and I and Doug, this whole tit for tat across the nation with, redrawing California and maybe Florida, maybe Illinois? What's your take on that?
Well, I think Democratic states are in a no-win situation. They're fighting with what they have to fight with, and if we just roll over, which, I think a lot of times we've just kind of, let the Republicans do what they do. And I appreciate the way Governor Gavin Newsom is fighting back. It'll offset the losses that we have here. And there's a Republican out of the California delegation that did file a bill in Congress to prohibit mid-decade redistricting. That's what ought to be the law of the land. Unfortunately, it's not. So that's why you have blue states fighting back.
Well, Dark One on the YouTube channel that we have brings up a point that regardless of what Texas has done, the Democrats should have started in California and gotten this going the moment that Trump made his request to Texas. We're behind the eight ball as far as the Democrats.
Carol Alvarado, let me ask you, what did you hope to accomplish with a filibuster? I mean, the reality is this redistricting from the get-go was going to happen. Mm-hmm. What good would it have done for you to stand there and not gone to the bathroom for X number of hours, whatever? What would have been the point behind that?
Well, again, to continue to shine a spotlight on it. This is summer. A lot of people are coming back from vacation, getting their kids back to school, not really paying attention to what's going on. And just like when the House Democrats broke quorum, that got national spotlight for a period of time. And everybody kind of stopped what they were doing and tuned in. And I think the filibuster would have done the same thing. And, maybe people would have thought, wow, if she's willing to put her body through all that and stand for, 15 plus hours, this must be something important. And I think people would have tuned in. And my other goal was to read comments. There were hearings in the House that were only limited to 5 hours. There were some virtual-only hearings in the Senate that had dismal participation, even though Senator Miles and I kept asking for in-person regional hearings from the Senate committee. So we had solicited people to give us their comments on the maps.
So, Carol, have you exhausted all avenues now? Is there any?
Is the battle lost?
I mean, we'll continue talking about this out, shows like yours and town hall meetings, meeting with our constituents. The other thing, too, that people don't realize is the map that we were voting on a couple of days ago, both in the House and the Senate, had some significant changes, especially in the CD9. Mm-hmm. And so that map never got the opportunity for any public input because those changes were made out of D.C., the National Republican Redistricting Trust, Adam Kincaid, the man who's been drawing the maps for Texas, there was never any public hearing. And so many of us were frustrated about that, and that was one of the things I was going to talk about in my filibuster. That change that they made just this last Monday is the one that took the East End and linked it with Liberty County.
Well, I guess we'll see, as they always say. You have a long road ahead of you, and keep up the fight.
Senator, it sounds like you are not going to stop.
No, we'll keep talking about this every opportunity we get.
Okay.
All right.
Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you so much, Senator Carol Alvarado from the Houston area. We really appreciate you always take our calls when we ask, and we really appreciate your participation on Hello Houston.
Well, and I enjoy the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you. Coming up on Hello Houston, former Houston Mayor Bill White is here to talk about the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. This is News 88.7.
When the news is overwhelming.
With federal support gone, Houston Public Media needs a stronger foundation for the future. The Houston Public Media Resiliency Fund is our response to ensure this service remains strong, stable, and community-powered. Your gift today helps us stay on the air tomorrow and the day after that. Give now to the Resiliency Fund at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Big challenge is if you let the little ones get you down. That's why Houston Matters devotes the first Monday of each month to a sort of group moan session we call Houstonian Pet Peeves. It's a communal, cathartic experience, but not everyone can join us live at 9 a.m., and not every peeve occurs to you right then and there. That's okay. We welcome your gripes about life in Houston anytime at talk@houstonmatters.org.
Tariffs haven't really led to much inflation yet. That's due to inconsistency, among other things.
It's not just a one-size-fits-all, right? And it definitely depends on the category. It depends on their sourcing, depends on timing.
I'm Kai Rizdal, inflationary pressures and what mutes them. Next time on Marketplace.
You can hear Marketplace coming up tonight. It's on at 6:30.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Good Reason Houston, working to ensure every child in every Houston neighborhood has access to a strong public school that prepares them for opportunities and a living wage after graduation. More at goodreasonhouston.org.
Join us for Hello Houston, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., taking a deep dive into the stories that matter to Houstonians, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained, with the generous support from our founding sponsor, Kathy Sanders.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Frank Billingsley with Chau Nguyen and Doug Miller.
All right, this week marks the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, one of the most devastating natural disasters in American history. While the storm struck New Orleans hardest, at least closest to us, I would argue that Pass Christian took the brunt of Katrina. New Orleans got a flood. They didn't get a hurricane, but they got a flood, and they certainly had impacts that were felt right here in the Houston area. So we want to talk about that. Our doors were open to these people, hundreds of thousands of evacuees. We provided shelter and support and a second chance for a lot of people who literally lost everything.
Well, joining us now is the man who led the city of Houston's response, former Mayor Bill White. He was at the helm of our city in 2005, leading an extraordinary effort that turned our city into a haven in a time of crisis. Mayor, I want to welcome you to Hello Houston.
It's great to be here, and I'm glad to be on NPR. You know, I watch this, scholarly TV show, South Park, and a few weeks ago it said that NPR was off the air, and I thought, oh my goodness.
Well, NPR has survived, happy to say.
There you go.
And if you out there listening would like to join the conversation, you can give us a call or text us at 713-440-8870. Mayor, I want you to take us back, if you would, to that time. You were about to face re-election. You'd been in office about 2 years at that point. Looked like you were going to coast to victory once again. But I remember in your inaugural address, the first time, you said you encouraged Houstonians to embrace strangers, embrace outsiders. Little did you know.
Little did I know. We're a city where most people, the overwhelming majority of people, including me, have moved here from somewhere else. So, we're used to, we're a city where people get to know each other and they treat each other. It doesn't matter who your daddy was or how long you've been here. If you're a Houstonian, you're as important as anybody else. Somebody may have a more important job, but that doesn't mean they're more important.
What was the planning like when Katrina, I remember all of the anchors in New Orleans that Monday afternoon saying, well, it looks like New Orleans dodged a bullet again and no problems. And then, of course, the levees failed and the whole city flooded, especially the Ninth Ward. What was the decision tree going on back here in Houston? What's going to happen? What are we going to do to help? What's that process like?
Frank, I would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning during those days where I was serving the public here and look at the National Hurricane Center and followed Katrina. We had part of a regional effort that many people don't know about, but major fire departments have people deployed around major areas that may hit a hurricane. I knew that our guys were out there with boats and stuff in case there was a big storm surge. But then, like you, I tuned in on the national news, and people were, surveying the streets, and that looked like, there were some trees down and all, but looked okay. I got a call and talked to the head of Shell USA that morning. He said, "Hey, I just want you to know the levees have been breached." And I knew exactly what that meant because I'd read a book called Control of Nature by John McPhee, and it was part of the book was about what would happen if the levees burst in New Orleans. And so I know that if you knock out the water system, you knock out your power system, and you have a bunch of buildings with water in them, and nobody can inhabit the city, and there's mold damage, then the city would become uninhabitable. So I did call all the department heads and senior staff of the city, said that I'm going to be busy for, I think it's going to be months, make sure that everything is done with the citizens of Houston are taken care of because I'm going to have a big job in front of me. And then I began sort of making calls. I think the first one was for the lead director of Walmart, tell him I need Walmart supply chain.
Yeah, that was the memory that my colleague, former reporter Ryan Korsgaard, and I mentioned this morning at the 10-year anniversary. So there's some supply chain logistic issues, and ironically, an ally in Walmart. Talk to us about that.
Well, that was just one of many. Look, the Red Cross has set up for sheltering for 24 to 72 hours. So they had Red Cross shelters around. FEMA has the same as sort of a parallel plan that hurricane hits, somebody may be out of their house, you put them in a tent or a shelter and have a cots available and for 48, 64 hours at most. But I knew that, as Frank had mentioned, this wasn't really hurricane damage. It was the breach of the levees that caused a city that was below sea level to be underwater and uninhabitable for an indefinite period of time. And I knew it'd take a long, long time because, the whole water system and power system is knocked out, and then you have to scrape all the buildings that were going to be mold damaged. So I knew it was going to be an extended period of time. And, I just started calling corporations. I called the next call. I started calling the Catholic bishop and the heads of mega churches said, get on your line, send out emails. I'm going to need tens of thousands of volunteers. And then we set up shelters. We, kicked the conventions out of the George R. Brown, and it took the county a couple of days to do the same thing with Reliant so that we would have some beds. And then, just to dial forward, my big thought was, we can't have Americans living in shelters for weeks and months on end. So we need to have a program where we can get people as quick as we can into apartments. Every vacant apartment we can find and rehab some that we can on transit lines so they can get their kids back in school if they have kids because they're at the beginning of a school year. And you know what happens if kids, are a month or 2 months out of school, they're behind that school year, and it can affect their self-esteem, learning, et cetera. And, we want people to go out and get jobs if they're able-bodied so that they can look forward and not back. So that was a big task.
So I recall that the Astrodome area, of course, there was so much focus on the Astrodome because so many evacuees ended up in the Astrodome. But also there was an effort there to sign people up for school, as you say, housing vouchers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember you were calling a meeting, I think on a daily basis,
we had meetings between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock for about 90 straight days at the George R. Brown. We would have, the FEMA people would be there. But, FEMA has, limited resources, and at the time it was pretty incompetent. I mean, our local people were pretty good. They were ex-military, but they didn't. How do you deal with over 200,000 people? And, they didn't have that. So it was heads of corporations, major nonprofits, faith-based organizations, as well as city, county officials. Probably about 90 people around a horseshoe table, and then every morning we went through basic needs, what people were seeing, and it was very detailed progress on what we needed to do in order to first provide relief, and then get people into apartments with furnishings and electricity and get on with their lives. Job training, virtual pharmacies, medical needs, you name it. That's what we dealt with.
Good time to bring in Rick Noriega, representative who was your incident commander during Katrina.
Right.
I think he's on the line. Rick, what's your take on that, your memory of it?
Well, I think that we saw what leadership looks like under Mayor Bill White. And as a result of all this, he was recognized by the Kennedy Center as a profile in courage. I recall when the mayor was getting calls of people that said, oh, well, we're going to have conventions at the George R. Brown. He says, well, I'm sorry, these things are going to be occupied, and if y'all have an issue, you're just going to have to take it to the courts or something. But we've got a duty here as citizens of not just the city, of this country, et cetera, in addition to what the mayor created at the George R. Brown Convention Center was a city within the convention center with not just activities for families, et cetera, but the innovation of doing things, of the triage efforts as buses rolled in with people that were still wet, needing prescription drugs and the like. And as the mayor described, the lack of cots, we quickly moved towards inflatable mattresses and doubled them up for senior citizens that couldn't get down on the floors and things of that nature. And the outpour of effort by the citizens of Houston for our neighbors. I was most impressed with the mayor when I was honored to accompany him to Second Baptist Church for a Sunday sermon, and the mayor gave a speech about the city on the hill in a biblical context that was just super powerful. So I've never been more proud of our city than when Bill White led that effort.
Well, I think we were all very proud of Mayor White, absolutely. Let me ask you quickly, could we pull this off today? There's another incident like this?
I hope so. I mean, it is some of the lessons, and, Rick Noriega is on the line. Many citizens may not know one of the reasons I called on Rick was he had set up virtual city in Afghanistan, okay, shortly before we called on him. So I was looking for competence, okay? So it's not only compassion. There's plenty of people in politics who get up in a microphone, they can give a good speech, but it really depends on having people who are competent managers who don't simply rely on our good, hardworking, decent emergency professionals, but if something like this happened to another city and the whole population streamed to Houston, you need managerial talent, which is what we were looking for. So at a time when the nation was looking at FEMA, who didn't seem to know what they were doing. Actually, there's one incident. They had contracted $500 million, it was, to bring these cruise ships into Galveston where they were going to put people in them. And, FEMA had its orders, and I had the HPD, restrain. I mean, it was a little interesting situation. And finally got, at the time, Congressman DeLay on the line. He said, stop this. They got orders from Brownie, I guess Bush called him, to put all these people on boats. But what we didn't want people to be isolated in these trailer camps as they were in places in Louisiana and Arkansas. We wanted them to look, forward and not back, and get on with their lives.
Did you play a pretty big role with the county judge?
Yeah, Robert Eccles, he was there with me every day at those meetings. We didn't let there weren't any partisan divisions or anything like that. Neither of us, we clamp down on any grandstanding in these meetings, including with people like the head of the AFL-CIO came up and I told him, Nate, you interrupt that. No, we have a rule against any speeches. It has to be, here's a problem. If you want to volunteer something to solve the problem, listen to the meeting, then you're welcome. And the chair recognizes you. Otherwise, we turn off the microphone.
That's true leadership in action, Mayor. YouTube, Alex is saying, treat all neighbors with compassion no matter where they are from.
Yes.
Let us never fear to live out this calling. It sounds like during this crisis.
And, Child, there was this one day, just another anecdote. I know y'all have some agenda, but so leaders of Vietnamese American community, of which is a very strong group of citizens and residents of our community, called me. We met at the Hong Kong Mall over on the west side, and I thought, okay, I started in on here's some of the things that we can do. I know there's maybe people that in need, and then I was interrupted. Oh, Mayor, let's stop right there. We called a meeting. Yeah, we have our agenda. There are several thousand people from southern Louisiana, often in the fishing community, that were Vietnamese Americans. We're taking care of them, and we're taking care of people in our community that are, that what we want to know. We came here as refugees. We know what it's like to be evacuated. We want you to tell us how we can help the fellow citizens and residents of the United States who are coming here now as evacuees. That's what they wanted. And there were a lot of people who, had motels and we needed rooms. And so the community, I said, not only the motels, but you got to provide food. And if they need clothes, do whatever you need. They stepped up.
Listen,
and lots of people
as the daughter of Vietnamese immigrants who evacuated and came here myself, I appreciate that story. I think in a case like that, in the diaspora of people coming to Houston, it's an opportunity to pay back. Right?
Exactly.
To give back.
Exactly.
What was the timeline getting it all back to normal? I know that the Astrodome was full of people for about 3 weeks, it seems like.
Yeah.
And then some of those people were evacuated because of Rita.
Yeah, so
people forget about Rita. That was 3 weeks later.
Yeah, Rita came on top of that, which did strain. We knew that the medical system. I mean, we set up virtual hospitals in the two big shelters and rehabilitated a closed hospital in Southwest Houston. There was a massive effort coming into Ellington to transport the people who were in the hospitals in the southern Louisiana area, and then we had to do the same with hospitals that were in the flood-prone area during Rita. So, that taxed us. But to answer your question, it took about 90 to 100 days before we were able at the peak to get, 34,500 apartments with an average of like 3.1 people in them. People saw the shelters clear out, but there were hotels and motels that were throughout this area. It's not everybody. A lot of people came. I think probably by my estimate about 80,000, something like that, were here in hotels and motels and in churches and with friends and relatives where they evacuated because they thought, oh, well, the power may be out. We'll go back home in a couple of days. Well, they weren't going to stay in a hotel or motel forever, and, they needed to get on with their lives. So first were the shelters, then the hotels and motels, and some of the temporary shelters that the Red Cross had and church congregations and others had all around the city. It took about 100 days to do it.
But as I recall, there was a backlash. There was a spike in certain crimes in certain areas.
Yeah.
And there was, for all of the opening of hearts and so on, there was an element in the city that said, we don't want these people here, right?
Yeah. No, so I went to a number of town hall meetings. You're absolutely right, Doug. And some of the pastors of mega churches, I could name a few, that had encouraged they heard from members of the congregation. Here's the facts. The facts are that the murder rate in New Orleans was 6 times Houston's murder rate. The fact is that, and by the way, the year before Katrina hit, only 40% of the people who were indicted for murder in New Orleans actually went to trial because the evidence gathering was so poor. They had gangs that had accumulated in the projects, turf wars, all human beings, but human beings that had major challenges. And, I spoke to the evacuees, and that was a tiny percentage of the evacuees. For Houstonians, what I said is what is just a fact, that suppose Houston had to evacuate, all of us had to leave Houston and go to other cities, every person. I sure wouldn't want to be judged by somebody who was a burglar or, criminal, and you can't, a few bad apples. We did have a special program for the criminals called the jail, and we had, it was a special housing program. We did do very aggressive policing within the law in the areas that were high crime areas, which we identified where the gangs had reconstituted. And by March, April, the crime rate was down to normal. And a year after Katrina, it was below what it was before Katrina.
And when the storm clouds had cleared and weeks afterward, Houston's reputation nationwide was raised. I remember I went to a fancy dinner up in the Northwest in Portland about a month or so later, and someone heard that I was from Houston. She tinked her wine glass and lifted her wine glass and said, "To Houston." They toasted us. Did you pick that up all over when you traveled around, talked to people in other cities? Did you hear that from people in other cities?
At the time and for quite a while, I did not travel from Houston, but there were many people who shared the same anecdote that you did, and of course I know people who would email me throughout the nation, and especially from Louisiana. There was a whole group of people who was running the New York Marathon that year, and they had some T-shirts on as a group that had Houston on it. And a couple of members of that group said, whenever we'd go by, there was all this people chanting about Houston, and we thought that's sort of cool, that's interesting. And then they realized what was happening is that people had seen Houston as a center of competence in the nation when so much of the national response was chaotic. So it certainly was good for our reputation, but even more so, it created a sense of unity and common purpose within our city. And I will tell you that, y'all may know that I attended, services every Sunday, full services, sometimes two, in different parts of the city. I think it did a lot for the relationships with our larger community and many African Americans when they saw that Houstonians, the vast majority of Houstonians, when the national news was talking about, primarily African American and using racial characterizations of we just saw fellow Americans. That's all we saw, and that's how we responded.
And that is the Houston spirit, Mayor White. It's such a pleasure to reconnect and have you on this show.
Yeah, thank
Mayor
you
White,
for being here.
yeah, it's been great to walk down
Good to see
memory
you again.
lane.
Yeah, you bet. You take care. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Coming up, we're going to discuss the successes of Aldine ISD. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Federal funding for public media has been cut. In response, we're creating Houston Public Media's Resiliency Fund. Donations made toward the fund will directly counter the loss of the $2.2 million in federal funds that were cut annually and strengthen our station's foundation to provide our services into the future. Contributing to this fund is easy and quick and makes all the difference to our station. Help build the Resiliency Fund now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Through college preparatory and STEM-based learning models. Grades pre-K through 12. Enrollment open now. Details at sstschools.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Theater Under the Stars, offering a season of musicals at the Hobby Center, including the official Broadway tours of Back to the Future and Monty Python's Spamalot. Tickets and subscription details at tuts.org.
Support comes from GenPro, a Houston-based home generator service providing power to homes during unexpected outages, helping with connectivity and productivity. More information is available at genpro.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Frank Billingsley with Chau Nguyen and Doug Miller.
And now we have a local success story. Aldine Independent School District is now leading the state in rating gains, showing the largest year-over-year improvement in STAR test scores of any large district in the entire state of Texas. Also, the district has seen a significant increase in the number of students in higher-rated schools, 6,200 additional students now learning in schools rated A or B.
Now, joining us to tell us more about Aldine ISD's recent successes, we welcome Dr. Faviola Cantu. She is the Chief Academic Officer for Aldine ISD. Dr. Cantu, welcome to Hello Houston. And quickly, if you'd like to join the conversation, call us or text us at 713-440-8870. So tell us this secret sauce to your success.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much. Just makes me so happy and so proud to be able to be here and share with you the amazing work that's happening in Aldine ISD. It's really, I wish I could tell you that there's a secret sauce that you can go out and buy, but it is really the collective efforts of the entire team and all the great work that we have been doing across several years now to get to this point. But the magic happens in the classroom with our teachers. And so we have an amazing teachers who are doing fantastic work, ensuring that we are growing every student every single day. And so we just stay focused on growing every kiddo and making sure that we're meeting every student where they are and giving them exactly what they need in order to be successful.
Have you had luck keeping your classrooms fairly small in size? I know that's been a big challenge around Houston particularly.
So class size is important, but at the same time, what's most important, like I said, the magic that happens in the classroom is the teachers and making sure that our teachers have everything that they need to be able to deliver really strong instruction. We're focused on providing instructional excellence across the entire system. So sometimes we're looking at balancing our classrooms, making sure we have the right size in the students in the classroom to teacher. But what's most important is that we have strong teachers, prepared teachers, teachers that are excited to welcome our students into the classroom every day, because a really great teacher can make a great difference whether the class is small or not.
So for all the advances we have had in so many ways in our society, technological and so on, it usually comes down to one man or one woman standing in front of 30 or 35 kids. That's what it's all about. So how are you doing in terms of recruitment? Are you having any problems recruiting teachers? Are you you face a teacher shortage? Where do you stand on that?
So we're always looking to attract the best talent to our district, and then at the same time to keep the fantastic teachers that we already have. We are always looking for talent, but we have a really great program in our district where we provide support to our teachers once they join us. We provide job-embedded professional learning for them through our curriculum-based professional learning structure. We also have mentor teachers, and we have from the day that they onboard, and we have a huge new teacher orientation throughout the entire school year, we just support them along the way. But at the same time, we do participate in the teacher incentive allotment through the support that we have with TEA. And so we are able to provide additional pay based on different metrics, but we are able to provide additional pay to some of our highest performing teachers.
You know, a lot of the attention around Texas and academics has been drawn on HISD and STAR testing and improvements in the takeover. But Aldine ISD, which is a neighbor, is seeing improvement. So I'm curious, Dr. Cantu, strategically speaking, what did the school district do to say, okay, we're going to get to this point now, but there are many steps we have to take? Talk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to hear the great work that's happening in Houston ISD. because at any time that we see great work happening in education, we know that at the end of the day, it's impacting students and helping students to do better. And so in Aldine, we're focused on student growth. And so we have been focused on our plan. We have a strategic plan, Accelerate, that's focused on keeping students first and making decisions about students first, looking at instructional excellence, our thriving team, and aligned systems. And so we look at instructional excellence. We are setting a standard across the entire district. Anywhere that you go, if your student is enrolled in one of our schools across the 111 square miles of Aldine, you are going to see the same standard of instructional excellence across every school. So looking at that strategically, what does a third grade classroom look like if you're at a school that's off of 59 or a school that's off of 45 or Beltway 8, 290, all of these highways intersect the Aldine School District. And so wherever you are in our district, you are going to see high quality instructional materials in the classroom. You're going to see curriculum-based professional learning, which is the support and the planning that we provide for all of our teachers to be able to deliver a really strong first teach. We give our teachers the opportunity to plan and to practice the lesson before they ever get in front of students, because we don't want the first time that they deliver the lesson to be in front of our students. And so we practice that ahead of time in teacher rehearsals, and then their peers provide feedback and give them tips on how they can improve the lessons. And so these are some of the strategic things that we have done to make sure that we have that same standard across the district.
Dr. Cantu, we have a question for you or a comment from Steve, who is in Midtown. Hello, Steve. Welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. So last week, y'all had on the superintendent for Houston Independent School District, and we're touting the successes there. And I'm wondering, how do the Aldine district's successes compare and contrast versus the HISD, especially given that one is an appointed rather than elected group?
That's a good question, Dr. Cantu. What's your answer to that?
Yeah, so I'd like to just to focus on the things that Aldine is doing. I know that there's a tendency to compare and contrast, but we're both districts doing really great things for kids. And so for our 56,000 students in Aldine, we were able to see the largest gains in state accountability 3 through 8 in reading in the entire Region 4. And that just makes us super proud, because we have put in place a reading plan, a course of action for reading instruction across the last 5 years. And so we're seeing the outcomes of that. We're seeing the growth of the work that we have done, focusing on improving literacy outcomes for students. And you can see that in our data, and it just makes us really happy. And we want to continue growing from there. Where else can we do? How else can we continue to support our students and our teachers so that we can keep growing that number even more? I think that, again, it's always wonderful to hear when school districts are doing, when we are doing right and doing well by students, and seeing that academic growth across any district, not just in Aldine, but across the system.
Well, Dr. Faviola Cantu, thank you so much for joining us. Great news on your success.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good work.
She's the Chief Academic Officer for Aldine ISD. Dr. Cantu, thank you. Coming up, we're going to continue to dive into the top stories of the day. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Donations come in many forms: a monthly membership, a one-time gift, and that extra vehicle you no longer need. We take any kind of vehicle in any condition. Learn more at houstonpublicmedia.org/cars. And thank you.
We have a sunny and hot day for today, the high getting up to close to 98. Right now we're at 92. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, State Representative Ann Johnson, a Democrat from Houston, will join us to share her thoughts on the Texas legislature passing the state's redrawn congressional map. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm guest host Chau Nguyen. We'll also be joined by Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, who will join us to talk about the 8-year anniversary of Hurricane Harvey and why neighborhoods still need help.
And I'm guest host Doug Miller. We'll also hear from Prairie View A&M University's Dr. Abida Solomon. She's a 2025 Excellence in Nursing Award recipient who will tell us all about Houston's shortage of nurses.
And we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts with us by calling or texting us at 713-440-8870 or by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump signed executive orders this morning aimed at ending cashless bail policies. One of the orders specifically targets Washington, D.C. This comes as the federal government continues its takeover of D.C.'s police department. Here's WAMU's Alex Coma.
Trump signed executive orders threatening to withhold federal funding from the district and other cities unless they reinstitute cash bail.
They thought it was discriminatory to make people put up money because they just killed 3 people lying on a street. Any street, all over the country, cashless bail. We're ending it.
But D.C. lawmakers are skeptical of how Trump's order will work in the district, as only Congress has the authority to overturn locally passed laws or withhold previously approved funding. The D.C. Council abolished cash bail back in 1992. Under the policy, a judge decides whether a person who's charged should be released to await trial. Supporters say cash bail disproportionately affects low-income communities and people of color. For NPR News, I'm Alex Coma in Washington, D.C.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia is back in federal custody and now set to be deported to Uganda. NPR's Sergio Martinez Beltran reports.
This was expected. Last week on Friday, Abrego Garcia was released from federal custody in Tennessee pending a trial on separate criminal charges. Shortly after that, the government said that Abrego Garcia had been served with a notification requiring him to report to the ICE offices in Baltimore today. And that's what he did.
The case became a flashpoint in President Trump's immigration policy standoff with judges after Abrego Garcia was wrongfully deported to El Salvador earlier this year. The administration wants to increase deportations and to that end enlist thousands more immigration agents. Alex Helmick of member station WABE says a facility in Georgia is set to train many of them.
Deportation officers find and remove non-citizens who can no longer stay in the U.S. for a variety of reasons. As the Trump administration ramps up deportations, the Republican Congress approved more than $76 billion to speed them up. Immigration and Customs Enforcement plans to hire 10,000 deportation officers by the end of 2025, and many of those new recruits will be sent to the coastal South Georgia town of Brunswick to attend the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, which is set to double the number of instructors focused on deportations. The official who runs training for ICE told the Associated Press it has cut its Spanish language requirements to reduce training time by 5 weeks. For NPR News, I'm Alex Helmick.
U.S. stocks are mixed this hour. The Nasdaq is up 48 points at 21,544. The Dow has fallen 233 points, or roughly 0.5%. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. The Harris County Toll Road Authority has saved upwards of $5 billion over the last 14 years. Bill King with the Baker Institute at Rice University says the county amassed that much money by getting a head start.
We started building toll roads early in Texas, in Harris County compared to the rest of Texas. So we have this legacy asset, and it's very profitable. It takes in about $800 million a year, and it clears about $400 million a year.
King says county commissioners have withdrawn upwards of $1.5 billion so far, which is supposed to go towards mobility-related projects. However, King told Hello Houston the commissioners are not very transparent about how they spend it. Another season of Friday Night Lights gets underway this week in Texas. News 88.7's Rob Salinas says referees are hoping a change in Texas law will help schools deal with unruly fans.
One of the bills signed into law this year allows officials at school events or other UIL contests to immediately remove abusive fans.
Before someone could be ejected from public school property, they had to get a verbal warning. And that was a loophole that was never intended for athletic contests.
Mike Fitch is the executive director of the Texas Association of Sports Officials. He says Senate Bill 2929 was needed to keep referees safe because while schools in the state keep growing, the number of people wanting to become officials remains flat.
Who would have ever thought in Texas we would have a shortage of football officials, but we do.
The bill was signed into law in June and went into effect immediately. Fitch says protecting against fan abuse is imperative in retaining officials.
Those that leave just because of the abuse that they get from fans, players, and coaches, we're not going to get those folks back.
The first full week of high school football begins this week. I'm Rob Salinas, News 88.7.
SpaceX will try again tonight to launch its Starship rocket from South Texas. Yesterday's launch was scrubbed because of a ground systems issue. Starship has experienced a series of mishaps this year, including explosions, both taking off and re-entering the atmosphere. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for dedicated and forward-thinking individuals to join their growing team. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
1 out of 3.
Ain't bad.
Ain't bad, I know. Ernie's on vacation. Celeste is at a conference for this week, so here we are.
So, yeah.
Doug Miller, Chau Nguyen, thank you guys for being here.
It's like the old TV gang. And
It
I
is
say
the old.
old.
It is. We could do a live shot right now, too. We could talk about anything.
You're giving me nightmares now. It's hurricane season. You say live shot. I don't know. I get nervous.
Well, let's talk about you. You retired.
Indeed.
And other than showing up here now and then, what do you do?
2 crossword puzzles a day.
Yeah.
It's a great thing.
Do you play Connections and Wordle?
Do the Wordle. That's it. Yeah. It's an exciting life.
Chau, your career, you are in so many different places.
Well, I always say media never leaves you, even though you leave media, right? So here we are. I'm a private practice psychotherapist. I do trauma work. I work with survivors. That's kind of it. My other job is full-time Uber driver to my 2 teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
And that pays very well.
Yes.
That's
pays,
nice and safe, right? I tell you, it's hot out there. I don't have much on the radar, so I don't think we're going to have any issues with rain today. But it starts to pick up as we go through the week, chances of rain as we go to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But it's just going to be hot still. There's a front coming through the country. I don't know if you saw the morning shows. This front's coming through, but it's not going to make it here. It's going to stall here, and that's what will give us better chances of rain as we go into the week ahead.
So no relief in sight?
No relief in sight? No, none.
Oh, boy.
I know. It's like cool weather retired along with you.
Yeah. We'll let it cool off at Halloween, right?
I've noticed wind in the city. Warm wind, but is there
it's been a little breezy.
Yeah, like the wind is kind of, but it's warm.
And Saturday was nice and dry, really. I mean, we had a couple of sprinkles here and there, but felt pretty good Saturday morning, I thought.
This morning was not too bad either.
Yeah. Hurricane Center is all pretty much quiet. I mean, Fernanda's out there, but that's moving away and off, to the northeast. So
quiet hurricane season.
Really
so
had
far.
kind of a quiet season.
Yeah.
Let's hope it stays that way. We're going to be talking about Harvey, which of course came in as a Cat 3, Cat 4, and then went down to 40-mile-an-hour winds, but dropped 50 to 60 inches of rain.
Boy, howdy.
I know Rodney Ellis is here to talk about that coming up, so we'll discuss that with him. But first, Doug, let's hear some headlines.
Well, we're talking about redistricting. The Texas legislature just passed a plan for redrawing the state's congressional districts that could help Republicans win 5 more seats in the U.S. House, as called for last month by President Trump. It goes next for expected signing by Governor Greg Abbott. Now, a lawsuit against the governor has been filed, alleging that the redrawn districts are racially discriminatory. Now, this 67-page complaint against Abbott and the Secretary of State, Jane Nelson, supplements legal action filed by LULAC back in 2021 that challenges the state's original maps, argues that redrawing districts mid-decade is unconstitutional. The National Redistricting Foundation, which brought LULAC's initial lawsuit, is also directing this new case. We've got Ann Johnson joining us, right? We're joining right now. She's a Democrat from Houston. Now, if you have comments or questions for Representative Johnson, you can also call us at 713-440-8870.
Yeah, not quite with us yet.
Oh,
okay. But I tell you, I want to ask her a lot of the same questions we were talking to Carol Alvarado about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Carol tried that filibuster. It was squashed by Republicans before it even got going. And so the question is, where do you go? What do you do? And joining us now is State Representative Ann Johnson, a Democrat from Houston. Ms. Johnson, thank you for being here. I see you on our Zoom call. So
good afternoon.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So I tell you, it's like you've tried everything. What's next?
Well, the next is to the courts. And we expected this, and we're prepared for the fact that we needed to get on the record the evidence that could be used by the courts to determine that this is absolutely a violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights. It is an attempt to crack and pack districts, to eliminate power of minority communities, which is protected by the Civil Act right. And so I think that the courts should do the right thing. The Fifth Circuit recently ruled that Louisiana had taken similar steps. And so I am still optimistic that the courts will correct this injustice.
Well, if they find this, what was done along racial lines in just one of the redistricted areas, not all 5, but just one, would that be enough to throw it all out? Or would the courts just say, you know what, you got to go redraw that one?
Well, it means you have to redraw. And don't forget, there's 2 cases. There's the case out of El Paso, where we're already dealing with the fact that we believe the maps that they drew in 2021 were also discriminatory. Now you add on top of it that this really is a steal of 5 seats before the next election. Don't forget, this just started percolating a few months ago. Trump went on the media and said it's a simple draw. You change the districts, I can win 5 seats. But the effect of drawing those districts were to eliminate districts that are by people chosen by communities of color and to turn them into seats that will be elected by white GOP. That is discriminatory. And so you have 2 issues that have come out of this most recent thing, which is mid-district gerrymandering, which nobody likes, and it's not even supposed to happen now. And the only way that you could increase your partisan score was to do it on the backs of Black and brown people. And that is a violation of the Constitution.
You know, Ann Johnson, there is just there's no argument about the fact that this is blatantly a play to add 5 more congressional seats. Nobody seems to make excuses for that at this point. And I recall back when Tom DeLay tried this a couple of decades ago, they talked about other things. The reason we're calling a special session isn't really redistricting. It's we got some budgetary things we got to worry about. It seems like the conversation is much more candid, and the motives are much more clear, I suppose you'd say. No one is trying to disguise the fact that this is a power play, in effect. The mood seems to have changed over these decades.
Well, and that's in part because the United States Supreme Court has said that you can try to increase your partisan score. And that's why they keep saying this is just about partisanship. But that's why it's important for everybody to recognize in this circumstance, you cannot increase your partisan score without doing it on the backs of disenfranchising Black and brown individuals, which is what makes it unconstitutional. And so while Republicans keep claiming that it's just a one-step process and all they care about is partisanship, you can't deny the facts and the evidence that the only way they get there is by disenfranchising Black and brown voters. And so one of my colleagues talked about the fact that if you look in Texas right now, that by the way these maps are drawn, for every one white Republican voter, you need Black African American voters to overcome that political power. For every one white Republican voter, you need 3 Hispanic voters to try to overcome that political power. That is negating and taking away the concept constitutionally of one voice, one vote. And so it is absolutely unconstitutional, and why we need the courts to step in. But as a Democrat, one of the other things that we've tried to do is to highlight the fact that this is just a blatant steal and disruption and corruption of the process and the way that it's supposed to work. And why nationally, we wanted people to see what they're doing in Texas, because if you let them get away with it in Texas and you just roll over and say, no problem, do create mid-decade redistricting. Don't forget, this whole week, when we tried to question them on the maps, there's not a single Republican that could say that they were part of it. They had somebody send money to a law firm and got maps drawn on them, and they did it. Everything about this is corrupted. Everything about this is wrong. None of this is actually rooted in the people of Texas. And so we are highlighting not only the wrong that everybody can see, but we're highlighting the injustice of the unconstitutionality and the manner in which they did it.
Representative Johnson, you've been very forthcoming to call this out as blatant racism. That's the big R word, right?
It is.
I mean, you've been very forthcoming. But this is a racist play, not just a power play, but a racist play.
It is, because I'll tell you, my dad was in the legislature in the 60s. I grew up around Barbara Jordan. My dad was one of the people that knew that helping her get elected as the first African-American woman from the South to Congress was significant, not only for every Houstonian, but to the civil rights movement. And he was very active as a white man of power and privilege to acknowledge that his strength was his ability to help people that didn't look like him have a seat at government, to help ensure that government worked for everybody. And so as I sat around the room the other day and looked around and looked at many of my colleagues and the way that they shook their head at me, I feel this pain and this sorrow that the Texas House and Texas as a state really used to be about Texas and about civil rights and about the fact that anybody could make it and have an opportunity. And to see that we are here in a sham special session purely because they want to give Trump 5 seats because he's afraid of the next election. And the only way that they can do it is to disenfranchise and get unelected people that have been selected by Black and brown folks. I'm so offended. And I do pray and hope that everybody that gets how wrong this is will just step up and say, look, I've had it. I've had enough. You can no longer shield the idea of what you're doing to hurt people is wrapped around the concept of partisanship. We are better than that. And there's a job that I have to do to the Constitution and to every voter. When I got elected and I raised my hand, I don't just represent people from my primary. I represent everybody in the district. That's the job. That's supposed to be the job. You can run as a Democrat or a Republican, but ultimately we're supposed to uphold this oath to the Constitution. And at some point, we have to be bigger about being on the floor and not just be blatantly partisan. And that's what hurts me right now in this moment.
All right. We're talking to State Representative Ann Johnson, a Democrat from Houston. If you'd like to comment or have a question for Ms. Johnson, 713-440-8870. There is some pushback from Republicans who say this happens in blue states, maybe through commissions. There could be a difference, maybe not racially divided. But it does happen in Democratic states too. And of course, Democrats don't complain about that.
I mean, I disagree because I call for an independent commission to redraw lines.
Well,
I would love to see an independent commission nationwide. Democrats voted for H.R. 1 a few years ago to say that we need an independent commission in every state to ensure that the voters are drawing the line, to ensure that there is some fairness and competition on general election day. And I support that. I would love to see that. I would also love to see campaign finance reform so that we can get back to having debates around policy and letting people select it without just having an overrun of extreme partisanship or extreme money and power in political campaigns. I mean, don't forget, Texas, we have an unlimited amount of contributions. It's why Governor Abbott was able to take $12 million from a guy named Yaz out of Pennsylvania to help pass the voucher scam. I mean, we've really lost our way and we need to correct it. So I would love to see us all put down our swords and go to an independent commission. The reason blue states are trying to respond is because you have now seen Trump say Texas will roll over, and Texas is, and now he's trying to get other red states to do the same thing and completely eliminate, and again, this is the issue, completely eliminate the voice of Black and brown voters, which is protected by the Voting Rights Act. And so we know that certain communities need to be protected based on our Civil Rights Act, and that's what states should do and draw it. And this particular draw is blatantly unconstitutional in that respect.
But of course, Representative Johnson, ultimately, the Supreme Court could end up deciding this. The Supreme Court of the United States gutted the Voting Rights Act, which you just mentioned. What makes you optimistic that they might reach a different decision in this case?
Well, I'm a public servant, and I run for office every 2 years, which means, and I'm a Democrat in Texas, which means I have high hopes. I know what it means to put your hand up and swear an oath. I still have faith in people in elected office. I still have faith that their conscience will do the right thing. And so, yes, I can't predict what they'll do in the future, but I know that this is the only place we can go at this point. It was impossible for Democrats to stay in a quorum break until next May. Republicans in the state legislature did not reach their conscience and did not say, Trump, we're going to say no. Don't forget, when Georgia Republicans were asked to steal an election, they said, no, we won't do this for you. Texas Republicans have said yes to Trump, and I hope voters make them pay for that. I think it is blatantly, inherently wrong. You're supposed to serve your people, not Trump. And again, not one of them can say they had anything to do with these maps. They took it from a law firm that was paid to draw it, and you heard Trump say, simple draw and I can get myself 5 more seats. We're not supposed to serve Trump. We're supposed to serve our people. And so all I can do is pray that the United States Supreme Court will do the right thing. They should. If you look at the law, if you look at the way the courts have ruled on these issues since the 1970s, they should do the right thing. But again, if they don't, it is up to the voters and it's up to people to correct and right the ship.
Do you think there's been some suggestion that AI drew these maps?
And that's a problem. I don't know. So
Right.
When we were on the floor and asked the bill author who drew these maps, how did they come about? He couldn't answer it. And so people should be really offended. I mean, go back and look at it. Not only did we ask questions, we were given, so you have rules on the House on how long you can debate. Somebody goes to offer something, you can have 20 minutes to do debate, and then you can ask for extensions. They would only give us one 10-minute extension. And so normally when you're having a robust debate about something this significant that impacts 30 million Texans, you would let everybody ask their questions. But every time we said, hey, I have more questions about this, can I have more time? It would go to a vote and the Republicans would say, no, Democrats can't ask any more questions. And so we'll see what happens in the court case. But we didn't have these maps when they came to do hearings in Houston or Arlington or other cities. They dropped the maps. They did one hearing in Austin, and 24 hours later, they voted the next day, and the next day in calendars, they put it on. Nobody got to ask the questions. I don't think we have the answer to that question. I still don't know who drew the maps. We know elected officials did not draw the maps. And so that's why it should offend everybody, the manner in which, as they said, they are doing this because they can.
Well,
literally.
If I could
Go
point
ahead.
something out, though. Traditionally, you say the legislators didn't draw the maps. Well, traditionally, consultants draw these maps of some kind. It's not like Representative so-and-so from Del Rio actually gets his hands dirty drawing lines. He works with other people. So how is there something inherently wrong with calling in someone else to draw these lines?
So if you go back and talk with folks like Chairman Paul Colbert back in the day when he would do redistricting, the manner in which and even for us in 2021, when we did redistricting, yes, you have draws, but then you look at it, you work on it, people come and testify on it, and lines moved all the way to the last minute. I mean, just go look back at the debate in 2021. There was nothing like that in this circumstance. There wasn't a single map that was dropped before we had hearings for people to say, wow, I look at where my precinct's cut out of my old district. that means I'm separated from my community of which I've had voting power and strength to get the elected official to pay attention to us on housing or any other issues. None of that happened because they literally did not drop the map until the day before they voted on it, which was 2 days before they tried to put it in calendars. I mean, this was a sham process. If any time they say this was transparent, you really ought to kind of laugh out loud. And so, yes, of course, in doing redistricting, there are lots of folks that come to the table and work on it, but it is done under oath in hearings where the voters can ask questions. And that's my point. When we got to the floor and said, hey, where did these maps come from? Well, they came from a law firm. Well, who drew them? None of us. And so it should offend people that we're taking this to the extreme, that they literally just keep saying, we think we can steal 5 seats and we're going to do it. And so until there's pushback from voters or courts, the Republicans have shown they have no moral backbone to say no to Trump or the extremism that he is now putting out that affects 30 million Texans.
Representative Johnson, we appreciate all that you've been saying. We've had some chatter on YouTube about whether or not we're going to hear from Republicans. We will add that Representative Kane Briscoe will be on our show tomorrow to talk about the Republicans' position and, you know, where they stand on all these issues.
Don't forget, he is taking advantage of having a new district drawn that he's going to run in.
Yeah,
and so that's the rhetoric that's out there. So again, are these people representing you and giving you a chance to select who you want in D.C., or did they work really hard to get themselves some seats? So great. I'm glad he's going to be on. Ask him who drew his potential new district for him. I'm offended.
That's a fair question. That's a fair question. So thank you so much for being on again. We really
appreciate it. Good to see y'all.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anytime.
Hard work.
All right. And Houston, I'm ready to come home. We all miss you. It's time for us to all come home. Look forward to seeing my friends and neighbors.
All right. Safe travels, Representative Ann
Thank
Johnson.
Y'all.
Coming up
Bye-bye.
on Hello Houston, Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis is going to join us to talk about another anniversary, the 8-year anniversary of Hurricane Harvey. This is Hello Houston.
Hello, I'm Josh Adams, General Manager of Houston Public Media. This station just lost $2.2 million in federal support annually. To keep our station strong, we've launched the Resiliency Fund, powered by community members just like you. Your support will help bridge the funding gap and ensure these programs remain free and accessible to everyone. If public media and this station matter to you, now is the time to act. Support the Resiliency Fund today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
887.
I'm Robin Young. Actor Wendell Pierce starred in the post-Katrina show Treme, but his family lived through the real hurricane, which took his childhood home.
One of the most frightening things was hearing, this is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. The levees have broken in New Orleans.
Wendell Pierce and Katrina, next time, Here and Now.
You can hear it today at 1 o'clock on News 88.7.
Support comes from the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center at Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center, offering comprehensive cancer care that is compassionate, personalized, and driven by clinical research. More at stlukeshealth.org/cancer. Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Central Market, with hundreds of wine, beer, and non-alcoholic options to toast the final days of summer and pair with cheese and charcuterie. More at centralmarket.com. Support comes from Avenue 360 Health and Wellness, expanding care throughout Houston with their new mobile clinic. Services include exams, preventative dental, immunizations, community education, and more. Details at avenue360.org. Support for Houston Public Media comes from CenterPoint Energy, which has completed installing 26,000 poles and trimming vegetation for more than 6,000 miles of power lines, all part of their plan to build a resilient coastal grid for the hurricane season.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Frank Billingsley with Chau Nguyen and Doug Miller.
As we mark the anniversary of Hurricane Harvey, we remember not just the staggering rainfall and historic flooding, but also the long road to recovery that followed. Harvey was a wake-up call, exposing deep vulnerabilities in our infrastructure and, just as critically, in how resources are distributed across our communities. Joining us now is Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis. He's been a key advocate for using an equity-focused approach to flood control and making sure that our investments in resilience reach the neighborhoods that need them most. Commissioner Ellis, welcome back to
Thank you.
Houston. How are you?
Good to be with you, even if it is an anniversary we all like to forget.
Yes, but unfortunately, some people are still paying for that. I mean, it's been a long road to get where we have been today.
A very long road. You go back and look, $158 billion in damage. Now, if you went and took Carla and other storms, I think of Carla, that's the first one I can remember. It tells you I'm a true Houstonian if I can go back that far. And you did it in today's dollars. I'm not sure how it would play out, but look, a lot of pain, and it's going to take a lot of time to get beyond it.
Well, and, people, I think after Carla didn't really recognize just the post-traumatic storm syndrome is what I call it. But the effects of the Memorial Day flood and then the Tax Day flood and then the Harvey flood, our city went through a lot. And I would go speak to groups and have people would be in tears saying, please tell me it's not going to flood again.
You've been around a long time. So now, I hope you're one of those believers. Climate change is real. So when you're old as I am, we are maybe. And you go back and say, Carla, that was really a big deal. But then all of those other incidents, all in such close proximity to one another. Something is happening, and we all have to prepare for it.
And, it used to be that we would get a hurricane once every 20, 25 years, when you think about it. That was kind of spaced out like that.
A major.
Yeah, a major one, yeah. And one of the problems with that is that the sense of urgency simply goes away.
It's generational.
Yeah, right.
Each generation gets that storm, then you forget about
Doug,
it.
when we had too many, you remember, then we weren't prepared.
Right.
When they come back to back, after Katrina, you remember when all those people died trying to get out?
Rita.
When Rita. Yeah. And then when you have too many in succession, it's our ability to stick to one thing at a time is a challenge, not just for those of us in public life or in the media. And with so many distractions coming at us, it's a big issue.
But, when you get a major hurricane once every 20, 25 years, like I say, the sense of urgency goes away. Mm-hmm. Do you sense any greater sense of urgency in the public, people you talk to? Have they it's been a few years since Harvey, or they're not paying as much attention? Do you see a lessening?
I think that anxiety is there. Mm-hmm. How could it not be? Anytime it's raining, look, to the extent, I don't know if I see it, I feel it. So it's sort of like my street is always flooded. I'm just in one of those areas in the medical center where it happens all the time. But now a couple of staffers whose cars have gotten flooded out, I feel anxiety. So I think when I talk to people, they tell me about it, but I'm sure it's real. After you have an incident like that, a lot of mental health issues that people take a very long time to get over.
Well, and the derecho in May of 2024, followed by Beryl in July.
And who'd ever heard of a derecho?
Right.
You get a brand new term.
Well, and then you have the issue of power outages, and how long is that going to last? And you're in the throngs of summer, and it's so hot and oppressive. But we're still feeling the after effects after all these years of a big one like Harvey.
That's why the issue that you started with, I think, is so important. When you talk about the equity framework, which I know you want to talk about, I didn't know what cost-benefit ratio meant until I became a county commissioner. I've been in the Senate for a very long time, and the head of flood control called me in as a new county commissioner. He said, I think you can really help us. And then he walked me through cost-benefit ratio, which is a nice phrase. It sounds like, of course, you want to get the biggest bang for your buck. And then he was saying, it's awful. Everybody I talk to in the Corps of Engineers, they think it's a problem. In a bipartisan way, everybody says it's a problem. Here's what cost-benefit ratio means. It means that you take care of the most expensive property first. But small problem. You never get to the areas that flooded first, that flooded most often. So when he walked me through it, I didn't catch it the first time. It was just so illogical. Maybe the third time I caught it. And I said, okay, you think I can help? How? He said, well, you know Washington, D.C. You worked up there a long time ago. You know a lot of members of Congress. And so I did a little research. Cost-benefit ratio, as best I can tell, in part came from an executive order that goes back to Ronald Reagan that I think was misinterpreted. I had a staffer do the research on it. But there was an executive order wanting to be efficient on how you spend flood dollars as it relates to federal money. And over the years since I was a staffer when that executive order came down, about maybe 1980 or 81, I was working on Capitol Hill for Congressman Leland. And everybody follows that. The state money chases it just for water events. Not necessarily a wind event or an earthquake, but for a water event. All around the country use cost-benefit ratio. And so when I explained it to a couple of members of Congress, and I said, well, maybe somebody should have brought that up to me, and I should have gone when Barack Obama was president and said, why don't y'all look at this? It turns out both parties have tried to change it, but it's stuck in the DNA of how you spend money. And so somebody said to me, one member of Congress who remained nameless, he said, well, if that was the case, how would they ever have done Sims Bayou over in Sunnyside after Carla, which I'm very familiar with? That's the only one that didn't breach. They did it as an earmark. And it was earmark Congressman Mike Andrews, if you can go back that far. Barbara Jordan tried, couldn't get it done. Mike Andrews was representing that area when it finally got done. But we no longer have earmarks. One member said, well, you don't have earmarks now. You can get a much smaller amount, but nothing on the magnitude of what it would take. When we passed the Harvey bond issue, the two watersheds that came up consistently were Greens and Halls, because those two watersheds flood on every event. Obviously, they're in a low-income neighborhood. And even Braves, it took a long time to meet the cost-benefit ratio standard. Now, look, I'm a sensible person. If you have a medical center, it's a good thing to have. You ought to protect that. If you have a downtown, wherever it is, it's nice to have one. If you're worried about flooding, if you had a watershed near, the county's responsibility would be the watersheds. If you have flooding near your airport, it'd be nice to have a way to get out of here. You know, if you have a university corridor, not necessarily if a university is spread out in every area, but if you got a corridor, you know, like take New Orleans. Of course you ought to protect downtown New Orleans. You ought to protect your port if you're worried about that. But beyond that, how could we still be stuck in that mindset of cost-benefit ratio? So what I did was I asked for some simple language. It passed in a bipartisan manner. All 5 of us on Commissioner's Court voted in the enabling document for Harvey that we would not follow cost-benefit ratio. The language said something to the effect we'd come up with an equitable framework for distribution of those proceeds, and we would follow it. I didn't try to define the framework. I'm not sure I'd have gotten 4 votes. That's what my staff said, because here's how most people define equity. It means they get more. They do. Most of us are like that. And if you don't get more when you're a politician, then you say divide it equally. And if somehow you come up with an equity framework and you think you'll get more, you're for a framework. But when you come up with a formula, if you don't get more, I watch it all the time, every couple of weeks. Then you just say divide it equally. That Commissioner's Court voted on that unanimously. The other thing that I wanted was I thought the county ought to have a program for minority and women-owned businesses. So I said, you got to do this disparity study that's required by the courts. And they agreed to do it, both. And I happen to have been the only person in this political party that I'm a member of on that court. And then when we developed a framework with buy-in, we brought in experts. I mean, look, how do you define equity? I thought you ought to use this notion of LMI, low to moderate income. I'm just accustomed to that back when I was on city council. HUD money, so-called CDBG, you know what I'm talking about. That HUD money would go out on a LMI, low to moderate income. You wouldn't give them all of it, but you have some equity framework, or you'd come up with a version of worse first. You know, these phrases come in handy. Then you hear other phrases, you watch them, shovel ready.
Yeah.
What's shovel ready? The neighborhoods who had the advantage, by and large. Or they had a pretty skillful politician who could make them shovel ready. But if you were shovel ready, that means you were following cost-benefit ratio. So the formula we came up with had a host of factors in there. It wasn't one that I designed, but it was the best one we could come up with. And we voted. A majority of the court voted to do it. And I knew all along we didn't have enough money. There were studies coming out of the Kinder Institute for up to $25, $30 billion. $2.5 billion was a lot of money. Largest local bond issue for a flood-related event in the history of Texas. But based on the studies and the news accounts, it was not enough. But so what I've been advocating with my colleagues is that we'll have to go back at some point. We divided this money into, don't call them quartiles. Who knows what a quartile is? They're not evenly divided anyway. Let's say we divided them into 4 buckets, following the formula. And I've been saying at least complete as many buckets as you can. You voted in the framework, you'd have an equity prioritization framework. You developed one. And if you didn't follow it, if you didn't complete as many buckets as you can, good luck when you go back. So if we do what I think we're on track to do, we will complete 1 bucket. And it'll make a big difference. Now, other buckets, the other 3, they're not quartiles because they're not divided evenly. So the big blow up we had at court probably added a couple $100 million to bucket 1. And I've made this simple argument. When you go back to the voters to ask for more funding, if you can't say you at least completed 1 of the areas that you said you were going to complete, how do you convince them to trust you again? And that's really the simple proposition.
We're talking to Commissioner Rodney Ellis about the anniversary of Hurricane Harvey and learning a lot about economics at the same time. If you'd like to join the conversation, 713-440-8870. We do have Kenneth on the line for you. Kenneth, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. I've been here as long as you have, and I'm a child of Hurricane Carla. And since then, what flooded then don't flood now. And I think it should be a geological approach to flooding and city planning, which I don't hear nothing about. Because right now, this city, what's above ground is outpacing what's below ground. And I've been sounding this alarm because, see, I know this area pretty well, and you can pretty much do a show on the changes in the geological makeup of this city. And I really believe, man, we need to look way down the road and start looking on how we're going to deal with this, because you have a type of land subsidence here where what was at one elevation a decade ago, it's somewhere else later on. And I think it should be approached that way, and we take a look at that and how it's going to get paid for, and thank you for the time. And I just wanted to bring that up because I think that's a very serious thing to look at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So there is a lot of concrete around here.
He raised a lot of good points. It's complicated also because the county's responsibility would be the watersheds, the bayous. The city's responsibility would be to get the water out of your neighborhood to the watersheds. Now, the county has made a good decision, I believe. We've helped the city in some of those areas. But our primary responsibility would be the watersheds. And look, I hope that if at some point we can't do our job, if the city could get if they use their drainage fee the way they told the voters they were going to use it, it would help. It wouldn't solve it all. But remember, because it's bifurcated, it confuses people.
Right.
And if somebody has a problem, they just mad. In unincorporated areas, that's on us. In addition to the Harvey flood bond issue, we pass the strongest building construction standards in the region, Atlas 14. And we pretty much asked, requiring more detention bases, it raises the cost of being able to develop projects. The city followed us. We had to make some changes on what they do in terms of what we do. Montgomery County did. Most others have, because we said, we're not going to partner with you unless you do that. But let me make this broad point. I don't think the good Lord planned for us to have 5 million people this close to the Gulf of Mexico in a flat area and then put all this concrete in. But I can't change that. Maybe the good Lord can. But we're here now. And so if we thought about it when Carla came, whoever the folks were in power then, there are a lot of things we do differently. Even when we added our toll roads, which help. So you can get all around more concrete. And any time you have impervious cover, the water has to go somewhere. Take New Orleans, since we made reference to Katrina. Who would have thought you'd have that many people sitting right there? But we've done it. And, you know, if another Harvey comes through, there's still going to be challenges. So we got to do the best that we can. We work as well as we can. It doesn't look like we'll have as much federal support. You get another disaster, based on what I'm seeing. It won't be, hey, you were in the weather forecasting business. You probably know better than I would. You know, we find out when you do certain freezes, layoffs, well, what happens? Some of it's a guess, by the way. But, you know, you make an educated, what was this phrase? You know, geological, even in the weather business, science helps you predict. Science is not always right. There are factors that you don't know. But look, we made a difference, and we got a lot more to do. So I appreciate Mr. Kenneth calling in, but you know, I just want to make the point. Yeah, of course, who in their right mind would build this much concrete? We slowed down somewhat, but you know, it's a big problem.
Have we learned any lessons from Harvey? Are we just going to sit and wait for the next one to come along?
I'd say a big lesson that the county, my part, a big lesson that we learned was you got to pay for it. You can't always wait on big brother or big sister. Yeah. Was it 85% of the people, 85% of the voters passed? You know, by the way, I will mention a mistake that I made. I thought it was an error to have that election in August because I know who normally votes on bond issues. You know, I'm not guessing. You can go pull the numbers and see. And it's generally the neighborhoods who've gotten the least. The neighborhoods who benefited from cost-benefit ratio normally were the more affluent neighborhoods, and they vote against those issues. The neighborhoods who got the least, for some reason, had more faith in government, or they were just so scared, they figured whatever you do, they voted for it. And I was afraid in a lot of those more conservative areas, maybe they were on vacation, they were out of town. Now, that 85% was impressive, but it was the smallest number of people voting for the largest flood bond issue in the history of the state. And we had to spend $1 million to have a special election. I argued against that. And I was so angry, maybe a little impetuous, I was going to vote against it. And one of my colleagues who didn't care that much for me at the time stopped me after I voted and said, I want you to really think about what you're doing. He basically saying you got what you wanted.
Well, I sense, Commissioner, that Houstonians during that time were just surviving, right, in the wake and the aftermath of Harvey, still cleaning up after the mess and getting into their homes and not really thinking, the average citizen thinking, I got to go to the polls, I got to do this. They're just surviving, right?
Well, you know, I think by and large, because it is their money, normally I would just favor letting the largest number of people vote. Now state law wouldn't even let you make that exception. That has been changed. But we were lucky it passed, and I'm glad it passed. But the point I'm answering is, yeah, that was big. That was huge. For the voters in Harris County and for the politicians to go say, yeah, we got to have more money, and we're going to go do this. Now, in some ways, because the list was thrown together so quick, you know, a lot of things were thrown up in the air, and some people would think commitments were made. There's no way we could have done all those projects that were on the shelf for $2.5 billion. We were not going to draw in that much federal money. And going forward, we won't have as much. But I think there is enough attention on the issue of flooding in Houston. Then you got others that come in, by the way. How about snow? You know what I mean?
We did have a little snow this year.
How about a derecho?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We haven't had the fire issue lately, but you know, I can remember the certain parts of Texas where you have fire issues from a drought. But hey, I just believe climate change is real. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of folks working together, and it won't be an easy fix.
No.
Just
getting everybody on the same page is not going to be an easy fix.
And getting us to change our habits.
Yeah.
You know, we got to decide. You know, more people still coming, by the way.
Oh yeah.
So you know. Hey, you got to figure out what you do to not have to build so much concrete. But they're coming.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah,
hey, good to be with you all three of you.
Good to see you again.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Can't believe it's been another anniversary. Thank you for joining us on Hello Houston and educating us on all that's happening. Well, coming up, we're going to talk to Prairie View A&M University's Dr. Abida Solomon on being honored by the Good Samaritan Foundation. Stay with us. Hello Houston continues.
If you're feeling frustrated and unsure of what to do right now, start here.
Support Houston Public Media's Resiliency Fund. Your support will bridge the $2.2 million annual gap left from federal funding cuts.
Giving to our resiliency fund means you're protecting the truth. You're making sure people stay informed.
You can do something. Give to the Resiliency Fund at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Or call 888-909-0887.
With federal funding cuts, Houston Public Media has lost $2.2 million annually. In response, we have launched the Resiliency Fund, an urgent initiative to protect the programs and services you rely on. That includes PBS Kids, that provides free educational programming to children and families across Greater Houston. Your support of the Resiliency Fund helps keep this vital service accessible to our community. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Like you, and from Baylor College of Medicine. Through research and innovation, Baylor continues to redefine what's possible in healthcare and medical discovery.
Support comes from GenPro, a Houston-based home generator service, providing power to homes during unexpected outages, helping with connectivity and productivity. More information is available at genpro.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Theater Under the Stars, offering a season of musicals at the Hobby Center, including new productions of the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee and $1 Million Quartet. Tickets and subscription details at tuts.org.
Support comes from Twin Liquors, a Texas family-owned home for wine and spirits since 1937. With over 100 locations across the state, Twin Liquors is proud to be part of the community. Orders available online at twinliquors.com for delivery or pickup.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Frank Billingsley with Chau Nguyen and Doug Miller.
Well, Prairie View A&M University's Dr. Abida Solomon has been named a 2025 Excellence in Nursing Award recipient by the Good Samaritan Foundation. This is one of Texas's highest honors in nursing education. As a professor in the Doctor of Nursing Practice program at PVAMU, Dr. Solomon trains doctoral-level nurses to deliver and lead care in a time when the healthcare system faces a significant nationwide nursing shortage.
Joining us now to tell us more about her work and about nursing in general in our area and across the nation, Dr. Abida Solomon. Dr. Solomon, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me today.
You bet. You bet. And by the way, if you'd like to join the conversation, you can call us or text us at 713-440-8870. So, Dr. Solomon, tell us, first of all, what is the picture of nursing in our country right now? Are we talk about a nursing shortage. How acute is it?
It is. Not just at the bedside nursing shortage, but also in education. So we are looking and trying to train and recruit new faculty to replace the aging ones. And it's a challenge. And it's true, the picture is not too bright, but it's still manageable.
What's the problem? You say money. Are wages not high enough?
I think it's a complex situation in terms of the support for nursing education programs. Also, I believe it's, how will I say it? It's just the change in technology has also has made nursing less attractive to most people, and because they get better pays in other professions compared to nursing, and it's very challenging. It's going to test you, your patience, your resilience, and sometimes your confidence. And so it takes special people to join the nursing profession. So it's going to be hard for me to put it in one sentence that this is why this is happening, but it has several factors playing into this.
This all sounds so bleak. What do you say or do to encourage this shortfall? By some estimates, we're reading that we'll have about a need for 1 million nurses by 2030, and that's just around the corner. That sounds like a crisis waiting to happen. How do you encourage people in the workforce to join nursing?
Well, we do it at our on smaller scales in our classrooms and in our nursing programs. We continue to encourage students to stay in the programs and to seek support. And we do our best as faculty to give them the support they need emotionally, financially, to get them through the program, or even academic assistance. If somebody has English as a second language and having difficulty understanding lectures and other stuff, we step in to help them out.
Well, Doug asked about nationwide. Are we seeing a big shortage of nurses here in the Houston area? I mean, we're one of the biggest medical centers in the world and one of the best. You'd think that if anybody's going to be a nurse, they'd want to come here.
Yes, it's just that the numbers are not there. Most people want to work here, and they want to work at the Texas Medical Center. As you mentioned, it's renowned for so many things. But it's just the people, the population that is moving into or interested in nursing is not the same as it was before. And like I said, the COVID was one of the issues. I mean, COVID came and it was brutal. A lot of nurses, died due to exposures. So many risks and hazards with the profession, and I think we have not developed fast enough with protections and also incentives to get people into this noble profession, I think.
You say noble profession. I don't know anyone who has anything bad to say about the nursing profession, which makes me wonder why more people don't pursue it. Can you tell me why people do go into nursing?
Like I mentioned before, and it stems from several factors, and the change in the employment. Employment landscape, and also resources that programs would need to get students, large numbers of students. For example, the fiscal buildings some of us have very limited technology requirements are not there. So we need resources to, first of all, start with the nursing programs that can offer students or attract students to come into the profession.
Dr. Solomon, you've been doing this for a long time. Why do you do this? And what do you do to encourage other people to join your profession?
I think the mere fact of getting an opportunity to touch people's lives, not just providing care, but also providing comfort with dignity and hope to people in their dire needs or most vulnerable conditions. So that's what got me into nursing. Did I answer that question?
Yes.
Or is something left behind?
No. Because all of us, we're scratching our heads over this because it seems as though it is an emotionally rewarding profession. But we hear you telling us also that that many of it's been also an emotionally taxing one, COVID, so on, and the pressures of the job and so on. So it's troublesome that more people don't pursue careers in nursing. And I think we're all kind of scratching our heads over the problem at this point.
But we do appreciate you, and we congratulate you for this award and all that you're doing to help your profession and others.
Yeah. Dr. Abida Solomon, a professor in the Doctor of Nursing Practice Program at Prairie View A&M University. Thank you for being with us on Hello Houston today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that brings us to the end of our show. Thank you for listening to Hello Houston. It's been fun, Doug. Frank, we'll come back again tomorrow to do this.
Okay, let's do it tomorrow.
Okay. We'll be back tomorrow. See ya.
Buy a Powerball ticket.
Maybe.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Dekamara. The 25-26 season features a Schubert Perspectives series, jazz with Branford Marsalis and Pat Metheny, and much more. Information and tickets at Dekamara.com.